Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who has been an actor, director. He's written episodes for shows like The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Odd Couple, and All in the Family. He helped create the sitcom Head of the Class, and in movies, he's co-written ones such as The Frisco Kid and The Jerk, a writer of such books as The Last Conquistador and You Can Go Home Now. And most importantly, he's a fellow New Yorker. Please help us welcome Michael Elias. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you.
Yes.
Honored to have you, sir.
Same here.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I saw that you grew up in the Catskills, which was such a huge hotbed of Jewish entertainment through the years. So I want to know, did you get to meet see many acts there, and anyone who influenced you?
Oh yeah, I would say there were two parts of the Catskills entertainment for me. One was the big Borscht Belt Jewish hotels. Well, they're all Jewish. Concord, Grossinger's, those places where you see big name acts. And I really didn't see them many, but, like Buddy Hackett and Henny Youngman and, those people. Then there was another hotel that was very important to me in my life called Chester's Zunbarg, which was a little left-wing hotel that attracted a kind of more socially conscious, hipper crowd, the kind of people who went to nightclubs in New York, like the Bonsoir, the Bitter End, and they were into jazz. And the owner, this is during the 50s and 60s, her entertainment was more folk singer, classical musicians, and also blacklisted artists and blacklisted comedians. So you had people like Jack Gilford, Bernie West, Paul Draper, a dancer. You had the Weavers. You had Pete Seeger. And that was and I have to say, those comedians were more in tune with what I love the popular comedians, Jerry Lewis and so forth. Right. But I think that was a bigger influence for me on my life. And like all of my friends who grew up in the little towns in the Catskills, we worked in the hotels. My chemistry teacher, Sam Baton, on weekends, he was the maitre d' at I think it was the Flagler. So it was like a union hiring hall. He would, on Friday, he would say, I need 3 busboys. And he would say, okay, you, Elias, you, Mednick, you, Niederman. And we would go and we would work the weekend as a busboy. And then we would get to see the shows and so on.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So after college, you studied acting, and you with legends. I mean, you studied with Uta Hagen and Lee Strasberg. What are your memories of them?
It was my memories. Well, it was intense, and everybody I knew, we all, all of us who had acting ambitions, we went to acting classes. I studied a little bit with Uta Hagen and a guy named Bill Hickey, who was great at the HB Studios. But at the same time, for me, life as an aspiring actor meant a day job. You could be a waiter, you could be a bartender, you could drive a cab, or in my case, you could be a substitute teacher. And that's what I did. And then I would go to acting class at night and try to get auditions during the day. And it was exciting. Lived on the Lower East Side in a slum building on 6th Street. Walked across the street and taught at a junior high school, and that was my life. Yeah, and then I got really lucky, and it scares me about how lucky I was. I was walking down 8th Street, and I crossed the street. I don't know why. and walked. So I walk on the other side of the street, and bumped into a college classmate I hadn't seen in a while. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to be an actor." She said, "I'm working at the Living Theater. We're auditioning for a play. Come on over and audition." I said, "Great." And I went, and I got a part in a play called The Brig. And next thing you know, I had a job,
Oh, that's
15
great.
bucks a week. It was great. I mean, I wanted to be an actor, and I was in off Broadway productions, Judson Church, La Mama. There was a great not underground, but there was a great avant-garde uh, theater then in New York of little plays. One of the things that all of us I started attending was improvisational workshop,
Mhm.
where you know improv, um, and run by Janet Coleman, David Dozer, uh, and it was fun. And there was a guy in there named Frank Shaw, and we started doing improvs together, and we were funny, and we made everybody laugh. And Frank said, we could do this. We could be a comedy team. And I said, I don't know. I mean, he said, listen, I've done it. I was a comedian, and I'm telling you, we could do it. I played nightclubs. I've toured. I've opened, And I said, okay. Turned out he was lying. He had never been a comedian, but it was good because it gave me confidence. And so we became a comedy team, and we rather mistakenly we would go we would walk into bars, and there weren't that many like comedy clubs then. I think there was just the Improv or Bud Freeman's place. There weren't many, but we would go into bars and say, "Can we do 5 minutes?" And the guy would turn off the jukebox, and the hookers would complain, and we would do 5 minutes, and the guy would say, "That's terrific," or "Get out of here." And then somebody finally said to us, "Guys, you can't do this improvisationally. Just pick your best little bits, turn them into sketches, write them down, and then do it." And we did. And you want me to keep going?
Yeah,
Yes, sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. I mean,
your
I'm
time, sir.
okay. I just don't want to.
No, not at all.
I want to allow for questions. Anyway, so now what do we do? We got to get an agent, and like some Judy Garland movie, there was an empty dining room in a little hotel in Washington Square called the Hotel Earl in the Village. And we went to the owner and we said, "Can we turn this into a nightclub?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And and we did, and we cleaned it up, and we sent out postcards and called people, and we were the star of our nightclub.
Wow.
And a guy came who liked us, and he sent an agent. And the next thing you know, we had an agent.
Oh, that's unbelievable. That's fantastic.
Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I
And then
love that.
yeah, that was and then we had a career. But meanwhile, I still wanted to be a serious actor. And so I kept being in plays, and I would do these little, I do off Broadway, and I would do summer stock, and I did all that stuff. And that was life. And then we got our agent, or our manager. That's right. Our manager's name was Arthur Stoyer, and he was Dick Gregory's manager too for a while. So we knew Dick, and he took us to GAC, and we got a real agent, which was a big agency, and it was. And then the next day, he started booking us in nightclubs. The problem was, so we would open and tours. So we would go to we got booked into nightclubs all over the country, and didn't go over so well. And we would the guy says, "Listen, these people, they're not getting you." And we knew it was always a bad sign if the musicians laughed, because that was a sign that the audience wouldn't. We were doing and Cheech and Chong. We were kind of like doing marijuana stuff. We were doing two satirical, as I said, Nichols and May, and
Right.
Nichols and Mike said we couldn't do that either if we went outside of New York. We bombed in nightclubs, so it was an up and down experience. We did open for a guy named Ed Ames. I don't know.
Oh yeah, of
We
course,
toured
of
with
course.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we toured with, and then we started doing a little more rock and roll. That was better. We opened for the Turtles. We opened for I think Janice Ian at one point we toured with. And that was fun and that was good. And then what happened? And then we started doing. We did all the nightclubs in New York, but since we didn't change our material that much, we would come out on stage and we'd start a bit and they would say, "Yeah, we heard that already." So
Yeah.
anyway, we got on the Carson show, and that was a big deal, of course. And we did a few, and after one of them, the two things coincided. We finally got Ed Sullivan. You want me to tell a story?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely.
We were booked on the Ed Sullivan Show. We had this great sketch. It was called Quiz Show, and it was about a guy who goes on like one of the quiz shows, and they show him a feather, no, a box, and they say, "Which box do you want to open?" And he says, "This box," and he opens the box, and in it is a feather. He said, "You want a feather," and he says, "But if you had opened the other box, look what you would have won." And there's a key. And then they pull the curtains and he says, "There's a key to this Cadillac with $50,000 in the glove compartment and golf clubs and so forth. This is what you would have won. Thank you very much for coming on the show." And the guy goes, "I want to go again." He says, "You can't go again." He says, "I want to go again." Anyway, it was pretty funny. So
That's funny.
yeah. So we do it. Sullivan has two shows, one in the afternoon, which is like a dress
Right.
rehearsal, and they tape it, and we go on, and we're waiting to go on, and this is in the middle of the Vietnam War. This is like 70 or 70, I think, 1970. We are preceded by Earl Wilson Jr., the son of Earl Wilson, the columnist, who was a singer, and he sings "The Dream, the Impossible Dream." And then when it comes to the bridge, he says, "I too have a dream, ladies and gentlemen, that the war will be over and that there will be no more soldiers napalmed and there will be no more bodies coming back." And it's heartbreaking, but it's awful. And the audience is in tears. And Sullivan comes out and then the guy goes, "And impossible dream, da, 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 da," and the audience is crying. Sullivan comes out practically with tears in his eyes and says, "And now I'd like you to introduce the comedy sensation of Elias and Shaw." We come out and it's like, we can't. Anyway, we do our act. We do the bit. It does not get one laugh. They say, when you go over to, after you finish, go over to Ed and shake hands with him. He refuses to shake hands with us. It was so we go back to our dressing rooms and they fired our ass. They said, you're go home. And they said, "It's not our fault. How could you follow that?" It's really like the Lenny Bruce thing. Anyway, at the same time, we had just done a Carson just the week before, and a guy from LA calls and says, "Would you like to come?" Oh, he said, "Who are your writers?" There's a producer, Ernie Chambers. He's producing Smothers Brothers.
I know Ernie Chambers.
Yeah, he's great. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Ernie Chambers, I was a literary agent. Ernie Chambers was a client of mine trying to sell his memoir.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you're the guy from Florida.
Right. Yes.
He told me about you. Yeah.
Right. I'm the one from Florida. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can sell my memoirs. Anyway, he says, so Ernie says, "Who are your writers?" He said, "We are." He said, "Oh, well, would you like to come to Hollywood and be writers on my show?" And we said, "Yeah." And he said, because we had just bombed on the Sullivan Show, our career was over. And he said, and I said, "What about the act?" He said, "Not interested." So we got on a plane and went to Hollywood and became writers on his show. That's how
Wow.
it started. That's how we got to Hollywood.
That's a crazy ride. And yes to all that. Not fair. First of all, you guys are in that Lenny Bruce. If you're idolizing Lenny Bruce, you're probably a dangerous act, like a cutting edge act, especially at that point. And to follow what you had to follow on Sullivan, that seems like a punishment. Um, but okay.
They did say, I'm sorry, because Moosie, they said, you can come back, we just give it a couple of months, you can come back. And we said, okay, and we will, and then Ed died. That was
Yeah.
it.
Oh my God.
And then
Anyway.
what? Do they want you to follow that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get to your films, uh, let's look at some of the people that you written shows for. I mean, your early credits. You wrote for the pilot of the Leslie Uggam show. And how'd you get involved in that? Did
That was
Leslie have
Ernie.
what's that?
Ernie. Ernie Chambers and Saul Wilson, they hired us to do this little show called, it was called What's It All About World, starring Dean Jones. Remember him?
Yeah.
From
Did
Herbie.
Disney? Yeah.
Disney, yeah.
What's It All About World, starring Dean Jones.
And it was a half-hour variety show. And they just never found a formula. It was hysterical because every week they would try a different format. Sometimes you would be sitting on a Cracker Barrel. Sometimes you'd come out on a tuxedo. But that was our introduction to writing variety television. And we were good. And we learned a lot from Ernie. And then, I don't know, then we did other things. And then Ernie called and said, I'm doing Leslie Uggams. You want to be on staff? And we said, okay. And we went and we worked on Leslie Uggams, which was an interesting show in a lot of ways because we did a sketch in the middle. It was really like a black sitcom with John Amos and Leslie, and then that got canceled.
You also did Glenn Campbell afterwards, right? I mean,
yeah, and then Rich Eustace. I have to say, it was a smaller community then. Everybody kind of knew each other. You would work on a show with 10 people, and then the show would get canceled, and you'd sort of, one guy would say, I'm moving to this show. Do you want to come over?
Wow.
And you would.
Yeah.
So Rich Eustace was doing Glenn Campbell, and he hired us, and so we went on the Glenn Campbell show, and in the meantime, I enjoyed it, but I didn't like it. That is to say, and there was something in me that said, this ain't going to last forever, these variety shows. And it was also too easy, and I wanted to write. And I split up at the end of the Glenn Campbell show. Frank Shaw and I, we parted ways. He teamed up with a guy named Ray Jessel, who was just a terrific writer, composer at Broadway shows. And I wrote a screenplay with a guy named Bob Garland, who I knew from college, from St. John's. And he went on to write No Way Out, Tootsie, uncredited. And we wrote a screenplay that they made. So I had like different careers, but one thing I really didn't want to do was variety anymore. So I guess from working with Rich Eustace, who produced the Campbell show, he said, do you want to team up with me? And we'll be a team. And I said, I will. And I want to, but I want to keep a part of myself independent and do things that interest me, either writing by myself or maybe whatever. And he said, yeah, sure. Same way for me. And that was good. It was a great partnership. It was like an open marriage. But we were, and a lot of this was brokered by Mike Ovitz, who was Rich's first agent. Yeah. And somehow we got on a show called the Pat Paulson Half a Comedy Hour, Frank and I. And that was another little and Pat Paulson from the Smothers Brothers. And that was produced by Bob Einstein. And one of the writers was Steve Martin. And Steve and I became friends, maybe because we were both philosophy majors. Um, and and Steve was a writer who wanted to be a comedian, and I was kind of a ex-comedian who wanted to be a writer, and I started writing jokes or bits for him, but that means with him.
Right.
And then in the middle of all this, with working with Rich and developing a partnership, and
Can I ask you first with Steve? What was your first
yeah,
impression of him? I mean, just because he went on to, could you see in him that fame that would come later right away? I mean, when you first met him?
absolutely. Because
Really?
I'm a great discoverer of talent. No, yeah, he was smart. He was funny. He was terrific. We played, and we were like two. I don't know. I mean, I'm older than him, but we were still two youngish writers. None of it. We weren't famous. But he was working really hard on his act, and he was so. He called me up and he said, I wrote this movie with Carl Gottlieb for Paramount, and they don't want to do it. And Universal wants to do it, but they want to rewrite, a big rewrite. Carl doesn't want to do it. Would you come on and help me write this movie called Easy Money? And I said, yeah, sure. And I went to Aspen, uh, and we spent a month rewriting it and ended up calling it The Jerk.
Hmm.
So that's how that happened.
A couple of other things we want to get to before the jerk, and one of them,
Okay.
one of them is, you worked on the series that you helped create, Black Bart, which was supposed to be the TV version of Blazing Saddles. We actually had on recently Burton Gilliam from Blazing Saddles. So how did that whole idea come about to turn that into a TV show?
Well, Warner Brothers, I guess they own the rights or whatever. They said we want to do a TV version, and you and Frank, we would together and write the pilot. And we said, yeah, sure. So we wrote the pilot, and we wrote a few episodes, but only the pilot was produced, and it was funny, and it had pretty much the same flavor as Mel's. We had Lou Gossett
Right.
and Steve
Steve Landesberg. Yeah.
Steve Landesberg was
You can
great.
see it on YouTube. You can still see the episode on YouTube.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And then for some reason, who knows, CBS didn't like it and they didn't pick it up. Next.
Right. And Mel Brooks had no involvement in that at all?
No, no.
Okay.
And no, he never mentioned it even. I know him, but he never. It was weird. But there were a lot of it was fun to do. Yeah.
Well, for years, there's been this kind of conspiracy theory about that the only pilot was the show, but that there were other episodes filmed so Warner Brothers could keep the rights to Blazing Saddles. Had you heard any of those conspiracy theories at all with that?
No, no. I mean, I can tell you, and I don't think they could have kept it. No, you can't film anything in secret. We wrote and produced the pilot, and then we wrote maybe 4 or 5 and brought in writers to write 4 or 5 episodes, which were never filmed. In those days, there was a guy named Harvey Shepard who ran CBS, and he was a man of sometimes. I don't know. He had his own taste.
Harvey Shepard, Senior Vice President of Programming.
Well, I'm one of the people to either cheer or blame, depending on whether you like the show or not.
You would hear, Harvey loves this, or Harvey doesn't love this, and that would be it. There was who knows?
So, Michael, you're not going to get away without us cornering you about the jerk. So there were 3 writers on the jerk, and it was you and Carl Gottlieb and Steve Martin. How did you become involved?
Steve and Carl wrote the first draft.
Mm-hmm.
They had worked together. Carl directed Steve's short. What was it about the waiter, the absent-minded waiter?
Right.
Anyway, he had a short that they did, and they knew each other. So, as I said, Steve called me and said, Paramount doesn't want to do it. They don't like the screenplay. It needs a rewrite. We can do it. And Universal wants to do it. But Carl does not want to do the rewrite with me. Would you? And I said, yes. So I went to Aspen. Steve and I rewrote the script. And Universal loved it, and they made it. And then there's a thing called arbitration, where writers fight each other for credit through the Writers Guild. And I was awarded a screen credit. And you'll notice that the credit says story by Steve Martin and Carl Gottlieb. That means they wrote the first draft. Then the screenplay credit for the three of us. And that lasted. I mean, that stayed. And that's how my name is on it. And we're all friends. And Carl Reiner, who directed it, he wanted his name on it too. But the Writers Guild has a much stricter requirement for directors to get screen credit than writers. So he didn't.
I just loved that man. So I'm always curious about each writer I've ever met. Sometimes their words are completely botched and destroyed by the delivery of an actor. But the director will come in because the director may have the same ear that you do, that Michael has, and then fix the situation. Did you have any issues on that film? Or is Carl Reiner as great a legend as his name lives up to?
Yes. I said Carl Reiner, he was a work of art. He was the kindest, most generous, funniest writer I had ever worked with. What happened was, at one point, I think I was in between shows, or I don't know what I was doing, and my manager, George Shapiro, called up and said, and George was Carl's nephew, said, "I'm assigning you to work with Carl Reiner. You're going to be his writing partner." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes, report to CBS, and he's working on a new Dick Van Dyke show, and you will write with him." So can you imagine, I went from like nothing or whatever to Carl Reiner's writing partner. We had a conversation, and it was wonderful. He said, "Okay, we have a problem with this show called the Dick Van Dyke Show, this latest episode, which is not working. And we have 8 episodes in the can. We don't know what to do. We're going to have so watch them." I looked at them, and it was Dick Van Dyke as a struggling actor living in Los Angeles. Let's think about it. We talked about it. And then he said, "Monday, there's a meeting. CBS is coming over and to talk about it." And Monday, we went to CBS executives, all came, and they said, "What are we going to do? Do we want to, throw out the new episode, all these episodes? Do we want to start all over again? Do we want to forget about the whole thing?" And we're talking and talking. And this is Fred Silverman, the head of CBS. And at one point, Carl's secretary comes in and says, "Carl, it's 3:00. And Carl says, "Oh, I got to go." And he says, "Like, go? Where are you going?" He says, "Group. I got group therapy." And they said, but the show, what about the show?" And he said, "Can't save the show if I'm crazy. Bye." And he walked out. And they looked at me and I said, I don't know. This is my second day." And then we came up with this idea to make it, give him a job so you don't have anxiety about Dick Van Dyke, as an unemployed actor. We gave him a job on a medical soap, and it was wonderful. It was a great season. And then Carl and I wrote a couple of screenplays which didn't get produced. I worked with him on, and I just grew to, I just loved the guy. And then he he directed The Jerk, which thank God he did, because he was the perfect person to do it. He had this wonderful relationship with Steve. They went on to do others. He knew exactly who Steve was, and Carl just had that great funny bone. And and he made it a success. So
Great movie.
yeah, can't say enough about him. I mean, he's just fabulous.
I just loved him. It was a sweet, sweet man.
I'll tell you another story. Rob doesn't like this story, but when I would sometimes on the weekends, you have to work on the weekends. We would work at Carl's office, and you asked about. I mean, kind of like, I always knew I was in the room with the great Carl Reiner, and we would argue sometimes, friendly, but about something, a line, and he would jokingly point to the shelf behind his head where there were 13 Emmys. And I go, okay, you're right.
That's great. The thing I did with him was, oh God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was John Denver's son, and John Denver, as we know, was not an actor. Like he never picked up a guitar. He never crutched on what he knew. He trusted Carl Reiner. Anyway, enough about Carl Reiner and all his Emmys on the wall that he.
I want to move on to The Frisco Kid. It starred Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford. I love this movie. It's the one I'm showing it behind me on the screen. I just watched it again recently. So where did that idea come from?
Well, Frank and I, when we came out to Hollywood, and we both wanted to write movies too. So it came out of a conversation, maybe, of course, a conversation about how come there's no Jews in movies. And if they are, they're all peddlers and wise rabbis. And so we started thinking about Jews and cowboys and started reading the articles from something called the Western States Jewish Historical Quarterly, which was a historical journal about Jews in the Old West. And we discovered that the Jews were a major presence in the Old West, and there were Jewish gunfighters, there were Jewish sheriffs, there were Jewish, everything, and not just traders, and they were really important. And we said, how come we never saw them in our movies? Because we loved cowboy movies and westerns growing up. You never saw Jews, so. The more research we did, and said, let's write a movie about a Jew in the Old West, and who's the ultimate Jew is a rabbi. So we said, okay, let's make it an odyssey. A rabbi comes to America, has to make his way across the country and experiences America, becomes an American, and all that stuff. And so we wrote it, and it was called then No Knife, and our agent got it to a producer named Mace Neufeld, and Mace Neufeld got it to Mike Nichols and Buck Henry. And the next thing you know, we had Mike Nichols to direct and Dustin Hoffman to play the rabbi and Jack Nicholson to play the gunfighter.
But did you have any names attached?
And then Mike Nichols said, this is my next picture, unless we can find the dolphins for Day of the Dolphin.
That's funny. That's funny. How about Gene Wilder? What was he like? What was your experience with him?
It was good until it wasn't. He was very smart, very funny. But sometimes the screenplay, as you know, it's kind of like a ball. And some people want to play with it one way, and some people want to play with it another way. And it's not the first time this has happened where, a writer writes a screenplay and a director says, I want to direct it. But the movie the director wants to make is actually sometimes not exactly what the writers wrote. Sure. And a star says, I want to be in this, but the character is not the one. So it's a struggle. You're not all on the same page necessarily. So here we were writing. We had to do a rewrite. I don't even know if we had a director, Robert Aldrich. Mm-hmm. So Gene wanted to be involved in the rewriting the script, and we did. And it was the three of us. 3 is never a good number in a room because it's always 2 against 1. If there's an argument, and that anyway. Gene had a particular vision of what the movie should be. It wasn't exactly what we had written. And you can find all of this in Jonathan Friedman's book, High Noon, History of Jews in American, in Western movies.
I want to thank Jonathan Friedman for introducing me to you, by the way. Yes, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a more detailed, anyway. So we rewrote the script with Gene, and I have to say at the end, we were in agreement. I mean, that is to say, I was satisfied. Frank was satisfied. We said, great. We hugged. It was we said goodbye. Gene said, I'm going to go to Paris and rest or whatever, and then I'll come back and we're going to make the movie. And he went to Paris and he rewrote the movie again. And he put in all the stuff that he put all of his stuff back in. So I love the movie, and I love Gene for his work and his career. I don't love what he did to the movie. And I don't want to rain on anybody's affection for the movie. But I think the screenplay that we wrote, and Jonathan will agree to this, reflected more the actual experience of Jews coming to America and making their way across the country. So that's, if you want to, as I said, if you want to find an account of this that's more detailed and specific, read Jonathan's book.
Do you still have the screenplay, the original screenplay?
Of course.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, it should be made into a series because it's timely and it's real, and some of it's dark, and some of it's and it's an interesting character because what Gene did was he played kind of a wise schlemiel, goofy, kind of dogmatic and insistent, and Gene's trademark of the tantrum, and that's not exactly who we had in mind. We had a kind of more rabbinical, tougher guy. But it would make a really good streaming series now.
I hope it does. I'd love to see that original one. In production.
I can send. I'm happy to send you the original screenplay. I could. I also, when the movie opened, I wanted to stand outside the box office and hand out copies.
Well, I want to ask about also, with the rumors that Harrison Ford part was originally offered to John Wayne. Was that true?
Yeah. Yes. John Wayne said, "I'll do it." And John Wayne had a price then. I think it was $750,000, and some idiot in the Warner Brothers business office offered him $600,000, and he said, "Don't talk to me ever again." And that was it.
Oh my gosh. John Wayne. Wow.
Yeah. And that was that. So, as I said, I have a great deal of affection for the movie. I only wish
you had your version.
I don't know if Aldrich was a terrific director. I mean, his movies are great. If he was the right guy for it, and that's anyway. So,
yeah, get that remade. I mean, not remade, but your version. I'd love to see that as a series or a film.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you about Head of the Class. I know we're going back to TV now, but
sure.
You helped create that sitcom, and
we had lunch or we had drinks with a guy named Stu Blumberg at ABC, and he said, I'd like to do. I think it's time to do another high school show. And we said, that's a good idea. Yeah. And Rich said, my partner said, only this time, let's make them really smart. And Stu Blumberg said, yeah, good idea. That was it.
Is that in contrast to what's Welcome Back, Kotter?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Wow.
all. I mean, not that they weren't. I mean, smart versus not smart, but let's make them really ambitious. All those kids who head of the class kids were.
Yeah.
That's how. And then we, we got Howard, which was a real coup. Talented kids, and made a pilot and got picked up and ran 5 years. Yeah, and part of it was, but I used my experience as a substitute teacher in the New York City public school system. Came in handy. Your life comes in handy when you're a writer.
No kidding, right? What you know.
Did you have say, being one of the creators, did you have a say in everything that would happen in that show?
I think so. Yeah. One story was we had a framed picture of Malcolm X in the classroom. And one day you get a call from the censor, a program was a censor at ABC. He says, you have to take down the picture of Malcolm X. He said, why? He said, well, it's too political, it's radical, it's this, it's this. And I said, okay, just write me a letter telling me to do it, and I'll do it.
Well,
never got the letter, and Malcolm never came down.
Okay, so head of the class was in the 80s, and they're complaining or, concerned about it being political. But the decade before had All in the Family, a show you also, I believe, wrote for. I mean, are they kidding? And it was right in there with those characters. I mean, I don't remember the character's name, but Tony O'Dell, Robin Givens, and them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Tony O'Dell was Tony O'Dell played. He was a Reagan Republican.
Yes, he was.
And we gave both sides.
Yeah.
Howard was not. Yeah, if you were the showrunner, then we didn't have that name. But if you were the executive producer, if the show is a success, you could pretty much do whatever you want. You had fights, you had arguments. There were Carl Reiner when we were doing Dick Van Dyke. At one point, CBS said he did a show where the daughter comes in and catches Dick and Hope Lang making love, and they have to explain to her what they were doing. And the censor at CBS said, you can't do that. And said, take it out. Carl said no. And they said, you have to, and we're not going to do the show. And Carl said, okay, don't do the show, and I'll never work for CBS again. I don't know. Anyway, those are the fights that they had.
Yeah.
But censors were big those days. They were on everything.
Sure.
They were on you all the time.
Sure.
Jokes. And it was you would, and especially variety shows. And look, they with the Smothers Brothers, right? When Tommy Smothers did the joke about the Easter Bunny, remember? What do we celebrate Easter? And I can't remember the joke, but
now I do. It's something about their activity. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, wait, censors. What did they call them? Standards?
The standards and practices.
Practices, yeah. I think sometimes they stepped in just to justify the fact that they got a paycheck for what they were doing. Anyway, so Howard Hessman left the show prematurely or before it ended. Do you know what happened there? And was there any bad blood there with
probably?
Yeah.
Howard. This is another, it's another thing. Howard had an idea of what Head of the Class was about, and we and the network, everybody else had another idea. He thought the show was about a teacher, and we thought the show was about a bunch of gifted kids and their teacher. So he wanted more stories about his life, and we would do them occasionally, but. And Howard was perfect for the part. He was great. And I think what happened was at the end of the fourth year, which is a crucial time in sitcom economics, because you need that 50 year to get syndication, good syndication. See, our ratings were going down. They weren't that great. And ABC said, we're thinking of canceling the show. So we had a meeting, and they said, you have to figure out a way to revitalize or freshen up the show. That was the expression. And we didn't know. And I don't know, somebody in the room said, how about replacing Howard? And ABC executives looked at each other and said, yeah. The thing was, by that time, Howard did not have a good relationship with the network.
Yeah.
Which partially came out of his background in theater and improvisational comedy and whatever it was. And he didn't like, he called them suits. Anyway, so there was nobody said, oh, you can't do that to Howard. Nobody said that, on the network stuff. Yeah. There was
it sounds like they were done button heads with them,
kind of. Yeah. So we said, yeah, okay. And then
Billy Connolly.
Yeah. It was great also.
Yeah, he was great. Then we got one more year, and then we did another show with him. He was great. Kids loved him. Everybody. It was a happy year.
I didn't know this. I guess I missed this one that HBO redid Ahead of the Class a few years ago. Did you have any involvement in that?
Not much.
No,
not much. It was Bill Lawrence was the executive producer, and he hired a couple of his writers, and they did a reboot of Ahead of the Class. Lasted 10 episodes, was canceled.
Canceled by third period.
Did you ever check it out?
Oh yeah, I watched it. They didn't get it right. They Head of the Class kids, and our Head of the Class kids were passionately interested in things. They were interested in history and mathematics, and they were interested in literature, and they were interested in politics. And they had passions, and maybe it's because there was no social media, so they weren't interested in that, and they were socially inept, but not horribly. But that was our comedy. And Howard, who was an older man and served, and Billy Connolly too, could serve as a mature person, helping them through the growth, development, and conflicts and all that stuff. What they did on the reboot was cast someone as the teacher, mentor, or whatever, who was about the same age, it seemed, as the students.
The kids.
So the other thing about Head of the Class was parents watched it with it, because the parents could relate to the quasi parent of Howard relating to the kids, and the kids could relate to the children seeing that parental figure, Howard, and they could enjoy it together. It was something for both of them. But in this reboot, they made this, I think, fatal error of kind of pandering in a way to with this casting of this very talented, I can't remember her name, actress, who was not that, as I said, not that much different from the kids. That was a big mistake. Anyway.
Well, you're writing now. You're still writing. You're writing books now. Your last one was You Can Go Home Now. Are you working on any other books right now?
Yeah, I have another thriller I'm finishing about. It takes place in Maui, and it's about it's called Night Dive, and it's about a scuba diver instructor and a night dive, and everybody comes out of the water except him. and his wife has to solve the mystery of what happened.
very cool.
Ah, interesting. He's not a great instructor, then.
Murder.
That sounds very interesting. I love how you jump from screenplays to novels.
Yeah. I also write for Graydon Carter's Airmail. It's an online magazine, and I've had my new article is coming out next month.
Oh, fantastic.
So I write for that, and they're kind of memoirs, little memoirs of my life in Hollywood or New York.
And you said you're going to do a memoir, so that's great. Hopefully you do that.
Yeah.
Hey, so Michael,
yeah.
No, please.
No, it's a memoir, but it's fictional.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took all my stories and I in my life in Hollywood in the 70s and 80s, and I put them in a fictional character so I could tell the truth.
That's good.
Oh, God, that's brilliant. That's just brilliant. Oh my goodness. Well, Michael, before we let you go, I just want to jump real quick back to The Jerk. It is on so many lists of the best comedies of all time. I mean, and it still stands up. What do you attribute that test, that how it passes the test of time?
Somebody said, or more people have said, I watched this movie with my mother and I realized she had a sense of humor. And there's something about that, that it's generational, that you can, or people say, if you like this movie, I'm going to like you. So I don't know. I think it's unquestionably at the heart of it is Steve Martin and his genius. There's no question about that. And there's stuff in there that somebody said, who wrote that? And I said, that's Steve. His speech when he's leaving the mansion and he says, I'll take this and I don't need this and so forth. That's all him.
Oh, no kidding.
That's all him. And it's Carl Reiner's brilliance to let Steve Martin be Steve Martin, and a lot of stuff they worked out together. And Carl Gottlieb and my modest genius too, I think. We all it was a real collaboration.
Really, what a great answer that it's just generational, and you could sit down with somebody you're related to or not, but from a different generation and watch, because funny is funny. And there are acquired taste comedies, like, if you get Martin Lawrence at dressing up as 8 family members around a table, that could be funny to a lot of people, not so funny to many others. But there's certain brands of comedy, and The Jerk is one of them. It's funny to everybody, and
Man, I just want to say one other name that has to be mentioned, and that's Bernadette Peters. She is amazing.
Yes.
That scene where they kiss and he tongues her from chin to nose. She looks, and she's I know she's about to break, but she doesn't. But she's so wonderful. She was that's it. We were lucky, and the characters. And anyway, it was
How can people follow you on social media?
I guess I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I've been kind of lying low for a while. I don't know why. I think I'll when I get my new article out next month on Airmail, which is I think it's pretty funny. It's about the time I played tennis with fugitive Abby Hoffman on a Hollywood Moguls tennis court. Weekly game. He was out here at Universal working on a screenplay of his movie and hiding out from the FBI. And I knew his lawyer, and his lawyer called me up and said, Abby wants to play tennis. And I said, okay. And we played and I had the use of a big Hollywood producer's tennis court, and we would play there a couple times a week. Anyway, that's the article.
That's awesome.
You definitely have a memoir there somewhere. I mean, for sure.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, right then you use the expression that you're laying low, and you played tennis with Abby Hoffman. So hey, you do what you want, sir. I don't want any trouble.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, we want to thank you so much for coming on today. It
Oh,
was
thank
a
you
pleasure
guys. I
talking.
really enjoyed it. I hope we
Yeah.
continue the conversation and
Yes, would love
do it
to.
again. Huh?
Yeah,
Yes,
please come on
absolutely.
back, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
All right, he's
and-
going to sign us off now.
Okay, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to Michael Elias. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.